Hello and welcome back to Sabbatical Stories. I'm your host, Bex Thomas, a career transition and sabbatical coach. And wow, what a way to end season 4. We are joined by the king of sabbaticals himself. This podcast exists to inspire courage and normalise taking a break from your career. If these conversations resonate, please do follow, rate and share the show. It really means a lot and helps other people discover the stories. Today's episode is a very special one because I am joined by DJ DiDonna, also known in the industry as the king of sabbaticals. He has spent years researching career breaks, studying what makes them successful and understanding the impact that they can have on life and work. With us, he shares his insights in his forthcoming book, The Big Time Off. And we actually recorded this episode last year, but decided to sit on it so that we could end season 4 in the best possible way, and also at a time when his book is imminent. In the episode, we explore the art of taking a sabbatical, why it matters, how to make the most of it, and the lessons revealed through DJ's deep research into sabbatical takers and their experiences. Let's dive in. It is a fascinating conversation.
Deep down, you've tried, dig deep, search wide, enjoy your climb, it's all for you.
Well, hi DJ, welcome to Sabbatical Stories. Thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here. Great to meet you.
At last, I have wanted to get you on since series 1 because not only do you have your own personal sabbatical story, but of course you're an expert in this field and pretty famous, infamous within our industry. So I'm super excited. But what I always ask individuals to do is introduce themselves because who better to do it? So can you please give our listeners an introduction to you and your sabbatical story, please?
Yeah. So my name is DJ DiDonna. I'm currently teaching entrepreneurship at Harvard Business School. I took a sabbatical in 2017, so feels like a lifetime ago. And I took that sabbatical after 8 years of running a credit scoring company, so like a kind of social impact firm across emerging markets. Yeah, so it was my dream job. I created it. We had great people. We were doing good in the world. Nothing was wrong on the surface, but was just kind of like burning out underneath the surface. And also, I felt like there were things that I wanted to do with my life that the normal kind of construct of time off, time on, vacation, running a company did not allow. And so a little bit of a burnout story and a little bit of just when are we going to have time in our life to do some really important things versus the urgent things. And yeah, so that kicked off my sabbatical.
What you did on the sabbatical is super interesting and pretty unique.
It took a while to actually execute it. So even though I had it on my radar and I had told my co-founders and we were making a plan for it, there was always like some excuse, like 6 months away from getting acquired, working on something, 6 months away from running out of cash. And so it took like 8 months from when I said I was going to take it to when I actually took off. And the thing that catalyzed it was I had a good friend from New Zealand who I officiated their wedding. The wedding was in the States. They were going to New Zealand to introduce the family. And they were like, listen, we're bringing along a bunch of friends. Like, why don't you come along? And so I had no plans to go to New Zealand. I'm a big outdoors person, so it had always been on the list, but it was the catalyst I needed to actually pack up my bags and go somewhere. And I think, be around friends for a little bit. And then I broke off and did a bunch of hiking and I bought a motorcycle and I did my first silent meditation retreat and just kind of spent, 6 weeks in my head and in a beautiful environs. And then the one kind of marquee thing that I'd always wanted to do on sabbatical was this pilgrimage. So I had done part of the Camino de Santiago in Spain, and I wanted to do something that had that spiritual bent, but more towards Buddhism, which I was kind of exploring at the time, and just really have some time to focus on the spiritual side. I'd kind of grown up somewhat religious and had fallen off kind of participating in that search for myself. And so yeah, it was like a way, I think, to access something spiritually that I hadn't given time to. So that was like 6 weeks, walked about 900 miles.
Wow.
And you stay in these little kind of huts that the people on the island of Shikoku, Japan kind of construct for the pilgrims. And yeah, it's been going on for a long time. And so that was the main thing. But then I think, as you probably know, there were so many like smaller, more intimate, more significant moments in the sabbatical that just having the time off allowed. So spending a bunch of time with my mom, who was sick at the time, and kind of being there for her, helping friends and family move, do construction projects, like, you know, being there for people in a way that my work life had not allowed for the prior stretch. So yeah, everything happened, you know, within those 4 months, and it was incredible that I could kind of pack it all in, and that hadn't been part of my life leading up to that. So,
and it really is, for me, the gift of time. You know, that for me is the whole epitome really of a sabbatical and a career break, is that gift of time. And, you know, whether you spend it with your mum or, you know, on a silent retreat, or what, did you walk on your own? Are you walking on your own for these 900 miles?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I don't speak Japanese, and so I was basically like a walking human baby. Like I couldn't communicate with anyone. So I definitely got the reflection time, and I got the experience of trying out the monastic life, which it was pretty clear was not for me.
Not for you. I am learning French, but I am very, very basic. And that inability to not be able to say what you want or be understood is actually a fascinating position to be in. Having, you know, always been the English speaker and very privileged, and just being in your own head, you know, is a fascinating sort of space to be.
Yeah.
Talk us through what shifted when you returned. Did you return to your company? Like, what did post sabbatical look like?
Yeah, I returned to the company, but you know, over the course of the sabbatical, my reflection was just that the kind of work that needed to be done for the company was just not aligned with the kind of life that I wanted to have in the next chapter, right? So partially just in order to do a good job with my company, I had to be on 4 continents all the time, and you know, available for Zoom or Skype back then, calls, late hours. So that was that. And then second, it was an identity thing around like, okay, I've been doing this for, you know, 7-8 years. Like, is this the thing I'm planting a flag on for my entire life, that is my identity? You know, I wasn't sure that was the case. I think part of the difficult intellectual part around it was because it had been my dream job, and because I was passionate about the mission, it felt kind of like giving up, not continuing and following it through. Which is kind of the roots of burnout, are around like mission-oriented people. I think the first studies were around healthcare professionals and nurses just constantly putting other people in front of themselves, and then burning out. Not that I was doing that necessarily, but and then the third thing was just about my identity as an entrepreneur. So wanting to do multiple things in my career. And I think in order to do multiple things, you have to leave things.
Yeah, you have to shed,
so,
don't you? You know?
Yeah, stepping away and leaving.
Yeah.
And I think it was important to me to try to leave that without knowing what was next. It's like kind of live in that uncertainty and be comfortable doing that. So I think going on the sabbatical gives you oftentimes practice being in uncomfortable situations and being in uncertainty, and realizing that you'll be fine on the other side. So yeah, so I kind of started that transition process. And, you know, because of what had just happened to me, I was having conversations with sabbatical alumni or whatnot all over the place. And every single person was like, that it transformed my life. There's no one understands it unless you've taken time off like that. And I can't imagine living the rest of my life without those lessons. And so it gave me some more confidence that I wasn't alone on that experience. And that there was something unique and special that had just not really been explored. You know, there's no shortage of like blog posts about sabbaticals and things like that, but there was no rigorous data on like what's actually going on here. It feels like it's more impactful, more important than a vacation, but no one had really explored that. And so I set out to try to like add to that canon, create that canon, because my past had been kind of collaborating with academics on social science stuff. So I'm not an academic myself, but I've always had like one leg in academia, and you know, take advantage of people much smarter than me and try to help, you know, bring their ideas to life.
I agree with you. There's a lot of stuff out there, so information, blogs, etc., on what people have done on sabbaticals, or you know, a lot is around travel, and of course in a way, but I think what has been missing, and what is certainly becoming more and more forefront, is that identity piece and that transformation piece, and that feeling of almost, oh my goodness, something's I can't go back. It's almost like, you know, when you unravel a tent or a sleeping bag and you can't stuff it back in. You know, that whole analogy of like, you've now, oh shit, it's now out. I've now done this thing. I feel these feels. What now?
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was the biggest piece, that there was no support or very limited support around, was this, you know, yes, great, I've done this thing and it's great, it's brilliant, but now I'm feeling all this feels and I'm going back to the role, the company, but actually, do I want to? And it's super interesting. When I spoke to Patrick, one of the biggest surprises from his research was that he never got to the question in his interviews around identity before everybody had already talked about it and talked about the identity shift and talked about, so they'd all 24 participants, I think, had brought it up before he even got to the question. So that whole identity shift, I think, is a big thing. So so go on, you've come back, you've had this shift, what's next?
On that point though, and I actually have not connected with Patrick, it's on my list of things to do, but I didn't even know, I didn't have the language around identity back then, right? I mean, there's a whole field of psychology and social psychology that has all the terminology and all the research on the things that I'd been experiencing. But I think for most folks, you don't actually know that, oh, that's a normal thing to have that shift, and you don't know what a liminal space is, and you don't know like how you kind of do an identity work. So that was the fascinating thing, is feeling like I had experienced something that was very common among sabbatical alumni, and also wondering, is this a new experience that we're having? And then realizing that there's an entire field of study that has kind of talked to. So obviously, but I think for us non-academics, no one's reading the journal articles. So that's one of the goals of the book, is just to help translate that stuff to folks, give them permission and give them some language around it.
To that point, and we'll get on to the Sabbatical Project in a bit, but I think I did the sabbatical style on the, and I got my sabbatical style back, and then I got a almost like 76-page thesis of research. And for me, I then go, oh God, I don't, you know, and that's what we need, is the book to give us, as you say, in layman's terms, in language that we can understand, and you know, us sort of minions out there taking the sabbaticals.
What was your style? Do you remember?
I wrote it down before this. So my style was 57% explorer, 63% seeker, and 23% achiever. That doesn't add up, does it? Should it add up?
Yeah, you would think it would. No, I think we just did it on a scale of like of 100% on each individual style, because I do think that it's everyone has kind of multiple archetypes over their sabbatical. So sorry, you said the highest was achiever?
Seeker. 63% seeker.
Seeker, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely what I was, right?
As we've touched on this, just explain to the audience what the sabbatical style is and what the different archetypes mean.
So, you know, it was just trying to put words to, I think, the feelings that folks have. And when I talk to people who are about to take a sabbatical, I think they kind of fit in these three buckets. The achiever is someone who like has something they want to get done. So they're usually continuing to operate in this like accomplishment mindset that is part of the reason we get into sabbatical land. So yeah, an achiever's like, I want to write a book. I want to like become fluent in a foreign language. I want to do like yoga certification, like yoga teacher certification, versus just going on a yoga retreat. And so that's often very important to them. And usually it's something that they end up kind of deconstructing or taking a look at. So one of the examples I like is a friend of mine was an author, and she was like, her company gave her 12 months off and she only took 9. She's like, I'm only going to need 9. I've got to like write this book. I know exactly what I need to do. And she just turboed on it, finished it, which makes me look bad because I feel like I've been working on it for years. And at the end of it, she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't take any time to rest. So achievers often skip the healing part and just go straight into, you know, they're running on fumes and adrenaline and go straight towards some other thing to accomplish. And then the explorer and the seeker are kind of tandem. I think the explorer is exploring outwards and the seeker is exploring inwards. So an explorer doesn't really have an agenda. They're just like, I want to see the world. Like I've always wanted to see the pyramids. I've always wanted to hike Machu Picchu. And so it's less accomplishment focused, though I guess you could, if someone's stamping their passport and saying they want to visit a certain number of countries, but it's really more like opening the aperture and being kind of open to all the things out there in the world. And then the seekers exploring inside, right? So meditation, like religion, spirituality, like trying to figure out what kind of career, what role, what identity you want to be in next. And so I think that I've just seen people approach things in those three different ways enough that I wanted to give some language around it.
That's pretty bang on, I would say. If I think about what I was, well, I don't know, because like why I was taking my break and what I was definitely seeking. I went inward and was very much, wanted to spend the time on really working out what I loved and what brought me joy, because I'd lost that, and what I wanted the next chapter to look like, but also exploring. Like, it was all about travel. It was all about where did we want to be in the world. We were kind of split between the UK and Australia, and we were like, where do we want to be? So actually it's pretty, for me, it's pretty bang on.
Nice.
And what do you think, knowing this, why do you think it's important for, somebody taking sabbatical to be able to know their styles, and then how do they respond to that?
Yeah, I put it together as kind of an experiment to see if it resonated with folks. Obviously, it sounds like it resonates with you, and we've had a lot of good feedback on it. I think that one of the things that is helpful, I've found, with when folks are taking a sabbatical, is just knowing that they're not alone, and being able to put kind of terms and research and stories to their feelings. For example, and honestly, like, I haven't gone into great detail anywhere yet. It's in the book, right? And so there's a full chapter about like archetypes, catalysts, and barriers to taking a sabbatical. And so, like, for example, that story that I told about the achiever, I think the lesson there is take time to rest. Like, I think there needs to be like a rest and healing phase at the beginning, which is really hard for a lot of folks. Very easy for others, but really hard for some folks. Because if you don't do that, you're really going to get to the end of that accomplishment mindset and feel like, okay, I just traded out work for some other type of work. Trade out my job for some other type of work. The silver lining is that in our research, we found this kind of concept of active rest, where you think about how to recover from something. It's like, oh, you need to not move, you need to get a bunch of sleep, you need to stay inside. And that's what like the literature on kind of rest and recovery says for the most part. And what we found is that folks, like, by getting outside, by moving their body, by engaging in kind of like tactile body stuff, like getting out of your head and into your kind of your body, actually helps people recover, right? And so accomplishing something can also help you recover, because you're saying, you're feeling empowered again. You're saying, I'm setting my mind towards something and I'm going to accomplish it, and that feels good. And it's something that you choose as opposed to something that you have to do, right? And so there's a silver lining. I think I'm not encouraging people not to be an achiever, but I think knowing that that's the mindset that you're going for might help you loosen the grip a little bit, where no longer are you like, I need to get yoga teacher certified. And instead you can say, like, I think I'm going to go enjoy yoga for a week. Instead of saying, like, I'm going to be fluent in Portuguese. It's like, I think I'm just going to go to Portugal and like take a couple classes and eat good food. So it's trying to like just give people a little bit of clarity, and then hopefully with the greater detail in the book, and then being able to match people that are thinking about things in the same way, you could create some kind of community around that, and increase the experience that folks have.
And it sort of touches also on that whole prototyping piece whilst on sabbatical, doesn't it? Of, not having to decide that this is something that I'm going to do and get, as you say, qualified in it or certified in it, but actually just lean into it and explore it and see whether it's something that you do then want to become qualified or certified in, and really solving for the why. I think a real trend that I see with individuals that I work with is when they initially think about taking a break, they've got all these wild ideas, and actually probably, if I think about it now talking to you, 90% of them would fall into the achiever role, right? So they're these high performing A type personalities that suddenly then want to take a break, and they're going to go and climb Kilimanjaro, then they're going to walk the Great Wall of China, and then they're going and they've got this whole tick, or they're, going to write a book in 3 different languages and do whatever. But actually, when you unpeel why they want to take the break and perhaps need to take the break, what they need and want to do is actually very far from that. So it's super interesting working with them to unpeel and go back to then see what unfolds.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's practice. It's practice for retirement. It's practice for who we are outside of work. I mean, you lose your job, it can send you into a tailspin versus holding it more lightly and being like, okay, that, that phase is over, and I think I'm going to take a little bit of time to recover and choose from a position of strength as opposed to like grocery shopping while you're hungry, right? You're just going to buy a bunch of junk food, and so that's how I think about it.
And giving ourselves grace that we're allowed to change. It almost touches on your point to going back to your role and your company of, this was my dream job. Like, why am I not content to stay in this forever? Well, actually, because we're allowed to change, and we do change,
Yeah.
and giving ourselves the permission to be able to
Yeah.
do that and shed and leave behind, and then move on and have all these different chapters of life as such. So let's rewind to you are back in your role. You decide that actually it's not where you want to be long term. What's next?
A friend of mine, Chip Conley, who runs the Modern Elder Academy, talks about like capturing a scent of possibility, right? And I think that the scent that I was following was the sabbatical research piece. And so hearing all these folks talk about it, I volunteered the rest of my year helping like a nonprofit I was on the board with. So I kind of stepped into their first like executive director, like interim executive director role, which brought me back to my alma mater of Notre Dame. And I kind of was talking to different folks in psychology departments and found someone to collaborate with on the research. And so it kind of gave me the permission to actually do the research and have some kind of like academic underpinning. And so I just started interviewing people in like a very kind of like formal way and qualitative coding and all that fun stuff, and got to like really see inside how an academic would think about what was going on. So yeah, it gave me the courage to leave my company and start something completely new where I wasn't obviously getting paid and had no idea where it would lead. And probably if you'd told me at the time that I'd now be like the foremost expert or whatever you called me in the small community, that was not what I was shooting for. I was not hoping to be like the sabbatical guy forever. But just as with a startup, things take a long time. And so in my mind, I was going to like write this academic paper, write a book, and kind of like move on in, in a couple of years. Of course, it took 7. And so, yeah, I mean, it was the beginning of another journey, trying to get the book deal. And I set up this, nonprofit, the Sabbatical Project, just as like a holding space for all the research and to try to bring together some sort of community on it. And so that's when that started. It was kind of inspired by when I did that Japanese pilgrimage. They had a Facebook group where people just, there were a couple thousand people on it and who had done the pilgrimage, and you could just send a message like, hey, I'm starting tomorrow, like, or hey, I'm by Temple 43, where should I stay? And it was this very kind of supportive and comforting resource, because everyone on the journey of the pilgrimage was doing it by themselves, but you had this kind of like background set of support. So I guess that's kind of the energy that I was aiming for with the Sabbatical Project. It's a solo journey, but if we can kind of arm you with some support and some ideas that can help make it better for you, that's the goal.
And resources as well, isn't it? I see a lot within that Facebook group of individuals sort of reaching out. Does anybody know of any good resources, whether it be books, whether it be sort of communities, or if it is travel agents or whatever? So it's resources as well around sharing knowledge and those that have trodden the path before you, really, because as you say, you don't know what you don't know, and if you're going in totally blind, having that support and that wisdom of people who've done it before you, I think, is absolutely paramount. So the book, can you talk us through like what the focus of the book is? Is it an accumulation of the research?
Yeah. It's kind of like a big idea book. I mean, the important thing is I want to give people like permission, inspiration, and a blueprint to like take a sabbatical, right? So in my conversations, I found that people need to feel like it's okay to do. Some people need a spark of inspiration to say like, I didn't even know that was possible. Wow, like here's a way that I could live my life. And then a blueprint, and I want to be careful with this. I think everyone wanted me to, my agent, my publisher, like, everyone wanted like a 1, 2, 3, how to do a sabbatical.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that it's important to give people like the raw materials, but you can't direct someone on sabbatical. It's kind of like teaching entrepreneurship. Like I can't teach you to like start a company that will definitely be successful. I can give you some tools around experimentation and some basic knowledge around how to get financing and things like that. And so I've tried to walk this line of like, hey, here are some absolute things you should avoid doing. But for the most part, try this, try this. Here's how you should think about structuring it. Here's what typically prevents people from doing it, and here's how to avoid doing that. So that's like the kind of the field guide part of it. And then the main kind of engine of the book is case studies of sabbatical takers interwoven with like academic research and kind of concepts supporting that journey. So, for example, I'll just keep using this example of the woman who wrote a book, kind of using that story to talk about active rest, to talk about how our identity and our work identity forms early in life, and kind of we activate it subconsciously. It's like the way of working that she was engaging in at work was the same way of working that she brought towards writing. And so like being able to see that and deconstruct that is important. And I think it's helpful to see yourself working in the same way when you're doing something supposed to be fun, to see like, okay, no matter what water you plop me in, I'm going to do the same thing. So that's like the overall narrative. It's like, defining like what is a sabbatical? How do you get into one? What are the best practices? But really like helping people understand, for example, liminal space, right? So this concept that like being in between two things is actually essential to enable like a transformation and reflection, and it doesn't feel good. Like it's horrible to be on sabbatical.
As Chip Connolly would say, it's that messy middle, isn't it? It's that whole like weird, you don't know which way you're going, you don't know who you are, you don't know who you're becoming, you don't know what And
everyone assumes because you're on this like long, glamorous vacation that you must be having the time of your life. But most people are undergoing some pretty serious internal work and having second thoughts about their life and their job and all that kind of stuff, which is difficult. And so like really giving people permission to feel bad, and to like prepare themselves to go through something difficult, as opposed to just having a laugh, as you might say.
And what were some of the biggest insights or themes that came out of the research?
Yeah. And by the way, you're the first person I've talked to about the book. And so you're getting like a little bit of a sneak peek.
Oh, an exclusive. I love it.
Yeah. We're just having a book title and cover kind of conversations this week. So that I cannot tell you. But yeah, the research, it was really about like the phases of sabbaticals that people go on. And so, this like recovery, this exploration, and then practice. So like opening up the aperture and then actually like experimenting with some of the things that you're learning about yourself. I think that we saw that people come back with a greater kind of self-affirmation in their own choices and in who they are, more authenticity. So feeling like the choices that they make going forward can be more their choices versus what the outside world would have them do. And kind of like courage to be autonomous, right? As you know, going off and taking a sabbatical is a scary thing. And I think doing it and realizing that you come back and you're fine and in many ways you're better off is like very empowering. And so that gives you a whole bunch of courage to undertake, additional things that you might want to do in your life. But I think it's important to mention that it's not like you have to blow up your life and make a big change. I think that coming back, making some tweaks with your relationship to work, making space for work in a different way. Also, we found many times that people come back and can kind of like renegotiate their roles a little bit so that it frees them up to do things that brings them more energy. Or if a company gave them a sabbatical policy, they can be more loyal to that company because they realize that the company actually appreciates them as a whole person versus just, says that they do. And not all companies can give someone like a great mission that they are super passionate about, but they can give them time to do whatever they're actually excited about doing. So those are some of the things.
One of the things you mentioned is, it can be hard and doing that inner work can be hard, and everybody is sort of, treading a path that we don't know what it is. And one of the biggest themes or insights, I suppose, that Patrick touched on was that this myth of, everybody thinks it's going to be the best thing you've ever done and it's, going to be the most enjoyable thing you've ever done. And actually for a lot, it wasn't. And it was really uncomfortable. And there was a lot of lows in there. With regards to myths, like what sort of myths do you think your research busted that, you went in potentially with?
I mean, I do think this piece around active rest and kind of like how we heal and how we recover, and maybe like the fact that we're working towards something of our own desire is a way to heal and recover is super important.
And the myth being that actually the way you rest
You gotta
is to just, sleep for 2 weeks and then you'll be fine, or just don't do anything. But
Yeah.
actually doing something that you're passionate about, but on your terms and in your time,
Yeah.
is that active rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, go on like a 4-day trek to Machu Picchu, right? Like that
Yeah.
can be like restful. I think that, I don't know if this is a myth, but I think people feel like they have to travel long and far in order to have the benefits of a sabbatical. Obviously, not everyone can afford to do that. It doesn't work with the logistics in their life. So it's really about just disconnecting from routine work. Like this concept that you can work on something that's not your job and still have an amazing experience, I think is important. So like trading in work where you don't have autonomy into work that really is meaningful for you. I think that this concept of it's how we work, not what we do. So I call it functional workaholism, where we talk a lot about burnout. I think burnout is a bit overused. I think like functional workaholism is this sense that the way in which you're working is having like negative effects on your health and your identity, and that you kind of engage it subconsciously, and you inherit it from your family of origin, you inherit it from your peers and colleagues. And we had all these folks that had physical ailments, stomach ulcers, like trigger fingers. And it wasn't until they stepped away from that they realized like, oh, I didn't think I was burnt out, but just the way I was engaging with work was not healthy, and it was not sustainable. I just couldn't see it.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And do you know what? That sparks a story in me from years ago. And I think it was probably going back 2003, 2004. I was working in the southwest of the UK, and we had a lady in the office who was very open about trying for a family. She was one of the leaders in the business, and it just wasn't happening. And I think probably for 18 months, 2 years, it wasn't happening. And somebody suggested, take some time off, just go, don't worry about work. We'll hold the fort, go and take time off. And within 3 months, she'd, got pregnant and the rest is history. So it's so interesting, isn't it? How subconsciously that impacts physically, not just mentally.
Yeah. I think now, like, we're beginning to get more data on this, right? Like, we have like a bed that tracks my stress levels, and we have like the ring.
Oh, the Aura ring.
And, yeah. And so you can see this stuff where I can track my ability to recover and my sleep quality during the course of the semester versus, when I'm off for spring break or.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, my dream experiment that I'm trying to work on here is to be able to do kind of pre-post during a biometric kind of study, right? So figuring out how people's health changes over time and how much longer it kind of lasts. So
how interesting.
I have a suspicion that, to what you said earlier, that if you return back to the same exact situation you were in before, like your metrics probably return pretty similar to where they were before. And so the question just is, number one, is there something you can do to steer yourself more towards like better health and stress levels as a result of your sabbatical? Or number two, like that might be the case, but what's the value of, instead of working for 40 straight years, having like a year where you are feeling healthier? Like there's an inherent value to that as well. So I don't know. That
would be fascinating, wouldn't it? So what data around sort of a few weeks pre-sabbatical, whilst you're on your sabbatical, and then post-sabbatical?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
I feel like it should be easier than ever to get, but we'll see.
Amazing. Well, watch this space. What's your hope for the future with regards to sabbaticals and career breaks?
I mean, the goal of this has always been to normalize extended leave and to make it accessible and possible for people of all different means and backgrounds, right? Like, obviously, it's privileged to be able to take a sabbatical. There's financial privilege. There's psychological privilege. Like, do you give yourself permission? If you grew up in Australia, like there's long service leave. There's gap years. Same with Israel. I think if it's not a part of your cultural story, if it's not a part of your family's story, like if your parents were academics, then sabbatical is common. So it's like helping to change it such that it's a predominant story and that there's resources behind it. That's the goal, is to get to a place where employers, where governments are supporting extended leave for reasons other than like health crisis, so that it's accessible to more people. And I think the way that we do that is by having people who are in positions of power in companies and, wealth and prestige be able to take it and talk about it. That gives other people permission to do so. and then try to work to create a grassroots movement, just like how the weekend was created. I mean, the weekend didn't exist 100 years ago. It was created by kind of like unions and factory workers lobbying for it. So that's the goal. I mean, it's a big one, but that's the goal.
It's a big one, but also I think the optimist in me looks back and sees how far we've come. So in the last, even 5-10 years, how long we've come outside of academia around the sabbatical being talked about and normalized. We've come a long way. So the optimist in me says we can get there.
Yeah.
And what about you? What's next for you in this space? Like 7 years on?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the obvious joke is I need to take a sabbatical. I think I worked right through, I committed that I would do it every 7 years, and I worked right through that, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And so I'm super excited for what that will be at some point. But yeah, I've always viewed the book as something where I think it's a way to just kind of put all your learnings out there in a way that can touch more people. It's a bit of a time machine, so you can talk to people in the future and help people out who haven't even gotten to this situation yet. I know that I benefited from so many people's books that I read, and so I'm excited just to deliver that. Until it hits the shelves, I won't believe it's real, and excited to see what's on the other side of that. So to help kind of be a part of the movement, and we'll see. But every chapter has to have its end, and so maybe this is the beginning of the end. Maybe it's the beginning of the beginning.
Well, many authors talk about the feeling of birthing a book, don't they? So, it makes sense that not parental leave, but a sabbatical is the other side of that, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll feel more permission to do it after having produced something. I mean, it was my dream when I was on sabbatical to write a book. And so I think it enabled me to steer my life in such a way that that I could, contribute to this thing which gave so much to me. So it's just really cool to have folks reach out that are inspired or feel permission or impacted by some of the work that I've done. So thank you to you for kind of carrying this torch as well. I'm excited to get to know more about your work and see how we can collaborate.
No, absolutely. Look, is there anything that we haven't touched on, or a question I haven't asked that you think we might have missed, or that would really help our audience?
I don't think so. I mean, listen, I think that the work you do is super important because I didn't have a coach on my sabbatical, and there's so much stuff that's going through your brain. It's really, really nice to be able to process it with someone who understands. Because I think, as you said, there's been so much change in the last 10 years around, good luck trying to have found a coach or therapist that would recommend extended leave as an option, right? And so, I would just encourage people to think about, can you have someone while you're in the planning stages just to bounce ideas off of and help you avoid, help you move towards best practice and avoid something that could derail your sabbatical. And then working with someone to help you synthesize all that you've learned. I think the only concrete recommendation I make in my book for a sabbatical is you have to keep some sort of journal. You have to write down where your head is at beforehand, how it's changing, what ideas you have during it, because then you can actually see the amount of change and actually talk to yourself in the past and say oh, I can see that this wasn't serving me, and here's some ideas that I have, and maybe I won't execute them in the next phase, but you start accumulating that stuff and it snowballs over time.
I think your point on that synthesizing what you've learned, I always say the magic happens in the integration. Yes, the planning's important and what you do is important, when you're on the sabbatical, but for me, it's the integration, and that's where I took 7 years to muddle through this kind of integration and synthesization of what I'd learned and whatever. And that's where what I've tried to do is put it in a really 6-stage program for people. Because I think that is where the magic happens. That's where it's life-changing. It's not necessarily what you do on the sabbatical, but how you integrate it afterwards. So look, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom. I always end by asking individuals their top 3 tips for anybody thinking about taking a break or about to embark on one. And we've had a lot sort of peppered through the episode, but what would be your sort of concrete 3 top tips?
So recommendations, yeah, definitely. I would say the most important is find someone in your network or beyond that you can get permission from, right? I think a sabbatical is a pretty powerful idea. Once you think about it, kind of like burrows inside of you and grows. And feeling like you have permission to do it is really important. So, whether it's on the Sabbatical Project Facebook group or within your network, if you feel courageous, you can put it on LinkedIn and just ask folks. So I have anyone in my network that's taking an extended break, I'd love to pick your brain. 2 is, I would write down all of your desires and wishes for taking a sabbatical and then cross like 80% of them off, or at least kind of circle the few kind of must-dos and organize it around a couple must-dos, but leave a ton of space. If you're not actually exploring and having no idea what the destination is for parts of your sabbatical, you're just in achievement mindset, right? So hold it loosely, be willing to experiment, let go of things you thought you might want to do. And then I guess the third is, and this might not make any sense, but like after you've taken it, like tell people about it, like be an evangelist, give other people permission to take it. So that's a bit of a recommendation for afterwards, I guess. That people need that permission. They need it exemplars, how we talk about it in the research in the book, to do that. So off the top of my head, those are my recs. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that one. Love it. And I love that final one because that almost is then you've got all of these ambassadors going out into the world spreading the mission and, in the end of the day, normalizing it and really working towards your mission. So thank you so much. It's been wonderful, as I knew it would be.
But it's exciting to get to talk to you about it today.
Love it. Thank you so much. Thanks, DJ. Bye.
Cool. Thanks, Max.
Deep down, you try, dig deep, search wide, enjoy your climb. It's all for you.
Thank you so much for listening, and a huge thanks to DJ for sparing his very valuable time to share his story and knowledge with us. DJ's work reminds us that time off isn't a break from life, it's an essential part of it. If you'd like to connect with DJ, you can find him in the links in the show notes, as well as a link to pre-order his new book. As always, a special thanks to Auntie B at the Flaxen, my incredible patient and talented producer. To Nikki Sweetland, our brilliant creative force behind all things social and visual. And to Joe Cook, whose soulful vocals we're so lucky to feature through the podcast. If you love this episode, or you know somebody who'd love it too, please do send it their way. Share the link, pop it in the group chat, forward it to that friend who's always talking about taking a break. And please do us a massive favour. Hit follow, rate the show, or leave a quick review. It genuinely makes a huge difference and helps more people discover these powerful sabbatical stories. The more we share them, the more we normalise taking a break. And if you have a sabbatical story of your own, or maybe you know someone who does, please do reach out via Sabbatical Stories Podcast on Instagram, or I'm Bex Thomas on LinkedIn. Until next time, take care of yourself, keep dreaming big, and remember, your sabbatical story might just be waiting to be written.
Deep down, you try, dig deeper, search wide.